He stopped calling, he disappeared without a word. And just when you finally started to let go, he shows up again like nothing happened. Why do men do that? Why do they come back after no contact, right when you've started to move on? It's not random, and it's not just about missing you. There's something deeper going on. And once you understand it, everything starts to make sense. When a man disappears and you go into no contact, something powerful happens, something most people overlook. That space you create, it's not just silence, it's a psychological shift. Whether you meant to or not, you've just triggered one of the most intense emotional responses in the human brain, the fear of loss. And for many men, that fear doesn't kick in right away. It creeps in slowly, quietly, and sometimes unexpectedly. In the beginning, he might feel relief. Maybe things were tense. Maybe he was unsure. Maybe he thought the connection had run its course. So when you stop reaching out, when you don't chase, call, or try to keep the conversation going, he interprets it at first as confirmation that stepping back was the right move. But that's just the surface. The deeper part of him, the part that was used to your presence, begins to feel the gap you've left. And humans don't do well with gaps. We don't like the unknown, especially when we thought we had something or someone figured out. Now, he's used to a pattern. He's used to you showing up, texting, checking in, making an effort. That presence creates comfort. It might even create a feeling of safety. But once that presence disappears, the brain doesn't just ignore it. It starts scanning for signs. It starts questioning. It wonders what changed. And that's where the emotional triggers begin. The fear of loss is often misunderstood. It's not just about missing someone. It's about realizing that you might have permanently lost access to something you didn't fully appreciate. That realization doesn't always hit a man immediately. Sometimes it comes days later, sometimes weeks. It's usually when he's doing something random, checking social media, hearing a song, or running into someone who reminds him of you. Suddenly it hits him. You're not there anymore, and maybe you're not coming back. This fear creates an emotional urgency. It makes him reevaluate the decisions he made. It pulls him out of that comfort zone where he assumed you'd always be around. He starts thinking, wait, is she done for real? And if you genuinely gone silent, not to play games, but because you're focusing on yourself, that energy is loud. It sends a message without you saying a single word. That message, it's powerful. It says, I'm no longer available for the version of love that hurts me. And whether he can admit it or not, he hears it loud and clear. That's when he starts to spiral a little. Because now, he's not just missing you. He's wondering if someone else is stepping into the space he used to fill. He's thinking about the things he said or didn't say, the way he pulled away, and the way he didn't show up when you needed him. And now, that silence you gave him, it's a mirror, one he can't avoid. The no long space becomes a vacuum that forces him to confront emotions he's been avoiding. For many men, this is the moment they realize what they had, only once they no longer have access to it. That's why the return happens. Not because you reached out, not because you chased, but because your absence finally made him feel something real, something he couldn't ignore anymore. And that fear of loss, it's not just psychological, it's personal. When you step back and go silent, something fascinating begins to happen in the male brain, something subtle but incredibly powerful. The moment you stop calling, texting, explaining yourself, or trying to fix what went wrong, a layer of predictability disappears. And when predictability vanishes, mystery takes its place. That mystery is one of the most potent psychological drivers of attraction. Human beings are naturally drawn to what they can't quite figure out. When someone becomes a little less available, a little harder to read, curiosity kicks in. And with curiosity comes desire. What's often misunderstood is that desire doesn't thrive in certainty. It thrives in the unknown. When a man feels like he has full access to your time, your thoughts, your feelings, your energy, There's nothing left to discover. But when you pull that energy back, and especially when you do it without a dramatic exit or explanation, it shifts the entire dynamic. You stop being someone who needs his attention, and you become someone he needs to understand again. Think about it from his perspective. He was used to your availability, your texts, your effort, your emotional investment. Even if he wasn't ready to fully commit or give the relationship what it deserved, he got comfortable with your energy being there. But the moment you stop showing up, a vacuum forms. And now, instead of focusing on what he didn't want or what felt overwhelming, his mind begins to focus on the one question that matters. Why did she stop? That question alone creates a loop in his brain. He replays conversations, he reapprays old messages, he starts wondering what changed, and more importantly, he starts wondering what you're doing now, who you're with, whether you've moved on. It's not necessarily that he suddenly realized he wants a long-term relationship. It's that your sudden distance flipped a switch in him. You became less of a certainty and more of a mystery. And mystery is intoxicating. The truth is, many men don't realize how much they valued your presence until it's no longer predictable. When you're always there, it becomes background noise, pleasant, but taken for granted. When you're gone, even quietly, your absence starts to speak louder than any words you could have sent. He starts to feel the contrast. Where there was once warmth and emotional connection, now there's silence. And the brain hates gaps. It fills them with questions, possibilities, and most of all, memories. The mystery is also connected to the concept of self-worth. When you stop chasing or explaining yourself, you're no longer trying to be understood. That quiet confidence sends a message. I don't need to prove my value to you. That in itself is deeply attractive. It signals emotional independence. And for someone who maybe wasn't giving you their full attention before, this shift in energy is jarring. In a good way. It disrupts the pattern he was used to. And that disruption makes him notice you in a new light. Without mystery, there's no pursuit. And without pursuit, there's no fire. But when you take a step back, not out of spite, but out of strength, you create space for the fire to spark again. Not because you're playing a game, but because you've stopped handing over your power. And that change, that unpredictability, that space, it draws him in. Not to the old version of you, but to the version he now has to work to understand. When a man comes back after no contact, it's not always about love, longing, or a sudden realization that you're the one. Sometimes it's about something far more subtle but just as powerful, his ego. The truth is, some men return not because they want to rebuild the relationship, but because they want to feel validated. They want to know they still matter to you, that they still have a place in your heart, so that if they wanted to come back, they could. It's less about reconnecting and more about reassurance. This kind of return is often driven by a need to soothe the ego's discomfort with being ignored. The moment you go quiet, especially if you've been emotionally invested before, it challenges his assumptions. He may have believed that you'd always be there, always answer, always want him back. So when you don't, that's a bruise to his pride. And rather than sit with that discomfort, he reaches out, not because he's ready to give more, but because he wants to check if you're still emotionally available to him. It's a power play, even if it doesn't seem like one on the surface. He might come back with a light-hearted message, something casual like, "Hey, just thinking about you," or "saw something that reminded me of you." It sounds innocent, even sweet, but underneath there's a hidden question. Do I still have access to you? That's the real motive. It's not about fixing what went wrong or taking accountability. It's about confirming that the door hasn't been locked behind him. For a lot of men, especially those who haven't done emotional self-work, validation is addictive. Knowing that someone still wants them, even after time apart, boosts their self-importance. It makes them feel important, desired, and in control. And it's even more satisfying if they didn't have to do much to earn that response. They might not be thinking consciously, "Let me test her feelings," But emotionally, that's exactly what they're doing. They want to see if the connection still exists without necessarily putting in the effort to rebuild it. That's why it's so important to be aware of your own patterns when he reaches out. It's easy to confuse this kind of return with real affection or renewed interest, but if you listen closely, not just to his words but to his actions, you'll be able to tell whether he's genuinely trying to reconnect or simply trying to feed his ego. Does he ask meaningful questions? Does he acknowledge past mistakes? Does he show consistency? If not, then chances are he's looking for a hit of validation, not a relationship. Ego-driven returns can also come from a place of insecurity. He might see you moving on, glowing up, doing better, and that unsettles him. Not because he wants to be part of your life again in a serious way, but because he's uncomfortable with the idea that you no longer revolve around him. The more you rise, the more he wonders if he was ever that important to you at all. That kind of uncertainty triggers his need to re-establish control. So he reaches out, trying to get a reaction, any reaction that confirms he still holds emotional weight in your life. But here's the thing. Once you recognize that some returns are rooted in ego, you take back your power. You stop interpreting every message as a sign of emotional depth, and you start seeing them for what they really are: tests, probes, little ego checks dressed up as interest. And when you don't respond the way he expects, when you hold your ground and don't offer instant reassurance, that's when you truly shift the dynamic. You stop being a source of ego boosts and become a woman who cannot be used as emotional backup. When you stop chasing, stop texting, and stop trying to fix things, your entire energy changes. It's not just about the silence. It's about the vibe you begin to give off without even trying. Men are incredibly sensitive to that shift, even if they don't always realize it consciously. When you're no longer emotionally available in the way you once were, when you're not trying to hold the connection together on your own, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. And that shift in energy, it doesn't go unnoticed. You used to be the one checking in. You were the one initiating conversations, trying to make sense of what went wrong, trying to understand him better, give him space, or show him love in a way you hoped he'd understand. You were emotionally open, emotionally invested, and that energy radiated through everything you did. Whether it was a thoughtful message or just your consistent presence, it gave him a certain comfort, maybe even a sense of control. But when that stops, when you pull your energy back, not as a tactic, but as a form of self-respect, the balance changes completely. Suddenly, you're no longer the woman who's trying. You're not the one putting in the effort to stay connected. That emotional labor that he got used to, gone. And now, instead of being the one who gets to decide when to respond, when to come and go, or how much to engage, he's sitting with a new feeling: uncertainty. That uncertainty leads to discomfort. And that discomfort leads him to pay closer attention to something he didn't really notice before: your energy. Energy is not just about what you say or do, it's the way you carry yourself. When you stop being emotionally entangled in him, he can feel the emotional space open up. You're no longer leaning in, you're not asking for answers, you're not trying to convince him of your worth, and that change is magnetic. It's the shift from "I need you to choose me" to "I choose myself." That's the kind of energy that flips the script completely. So what's really interesting is that this shift in your vibe often brings out the very behavior you used to hope for. When your energy was focused on him, he may have taken it for granted. He might not have appreciated the consistency, the care, the kindness. But now that you're calm, detached, and not looking in his direction, he starts to feel the gap. He notices the difference in how you show up, or rather, how you don't anymore. It's like a radar goes off in his mind. He doesn't see you chasing anymore, and now he starts to wonder what changed. And what really gets him is that you didn't explain it. You didn't give a big speech or send an angry message or leave a dramatic exit. You just stepped back, quietly, strongly, without asking for his permission. And that's powerful because it shows growth, it shows maturity. It shows that you've realigned your energy and you're not available for anyone who can't match it. That kind of confidence is rare and incredibly attractive. You start to remember the way you used to show up, the little things, the attention to detail, the way you made him feel without asking for much in return. But now that energy isn't his to enjoy, and that realization hits different. It creates a pull, because people naturally want what they no longer have easy access to. Your energy, once given freely, is now protected, guarded, focused inward, and whether he admits it or not, he feels the shift. And that shift makes him start to miss the version of you he thought would always be there. When a man experiences your absence during no contact, it often gives him the one thing he didn't have when you were constantly around: clarity. See, when emotions are high and there's tension, confusion, or even indifference in a relationship, things get cloudy, feelings get buried under pressure, routine, miscommunication, or emotional immaturity. He might not have known how he truly felt about you while you were still available to him. He might have been distracted, detached, or simply unsure, but when you disappear, when you stop showing up the way you used to, the fog starts to lift. Without your presence filling up the emotional space, he's left with himself, his thoughts, his feelings, and all the questions he never had to answer before. Your silence gives him the space to feel the weight of what he's lost or might be losing. For some men, that silence becomes the loudest thing in their world. It gives them a chance to reflect, not because they were forced to, but because there's no longer any noise. No longer any emotional cushion provided by you constantly being there. He starts to notice things he didn't appreciate while you were around. Your kindness, your patience, the way you listened, the way you made him feel grounded. Those small things that once felt so ordinary suddenly become significant in their absence. And that reflection doesn't come immediately. It takes time. It creeps in slowly. Through a memory, a moment, a conversation with someone else. He starts putting the pieces together, and for the first time, he's not just thinking about what went wrong, he's feeling it. That's the difference. When you're present, he can avoid that depth. He can escape into distractions, knowing you're still there if he ever wants to reconnect. But when you remove yourself, that safety net is gone. And without that net, he has to start asking himself real questions. Was I fair to her? Did I push her away? Did I give her what she needed? Why do I still think about her? The absence forces an internal dialogue that wasn't happening before. Clarity also comes from contrast. When he's out in the world talking to other people, dating again, or even just spending time alone, he begins to compare. He may meet someone new, but that new person doesn't laugh at his jokes the way you did. She doesn't challenge him like you did. She doesn't bring that calm or fire or softness that you carried. And suddenly he realizes that what he had with you wasn't just about attraction or companionship. It was about emotional connection. And that kind of connection doesn't show up every day. It's in that clarity that men often come back. Not because you ask them to, not because you convince them, but because on their own, they realize the value of what they walked away from. Sometimes it takes losing someone's energy to see what that energy really meant. It's not about punishing him with silence. It's about giving him the freedom and the emotional responsibility to figure out what he wants without your influence clouding his vision. The irony is, many women try so hard to explain, fix, and help him understand while they're still emotionally available. But it's only in the quiet, in the stillness you leave behind, that he truly begins to see. Clarity doesn't always come through conversation. Sometimes it comes through absence. And when it does, it changes everything. Not because you asked for it, but because he finally had to face the truth that was there all along. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you go silent and start focusing on yourself. When you stop making someone else your emotional center. When you stop waiting, chasing, or wondering what he's doing, your energy begins to shift in a way that's impossible to ignore. You begin to glow differently, not just on the outside, but in the way you carry yourself, in your conversations, in how you walk into a room. That transformation doesn't go unnoticed, especially by the man who once had access to a version of you that may have been pouring too much into him and not enough into yourself. When you're in a place of emotional attachment, especially one where you're not being reciprocated fully, it's easy to lose yourself. You don't even notice it at first. You begin making subtle compromises, adjusting your boundaries, constantly trying to understand him, make things work, or prove your worth. You give more than you get, and before you realize it, you're investing your energy into someone who isn't meeting you halfway. But when you go no contact, truly go no contact, it creates space, not just between you and him, but inside of you. And that space becomes sacred. It gives you room to come back to yourself. You start remembering who you were before the relationship, before the confusion, before the overthinking. You reconnect with your passions. You laugh more easily, breathe more deeply, and begin to experience joy that isn't tied to how he's responding or not responding. You begin to heal. And that healing shows. Maybe you get physically healthier, start taking better care of your body. Maybe your confidence rises as you start hitting your goals again, focusing on your career, spending time with people who uplift you. There's a shift in your vibration. It's real and it radiates. This new version of you, she's not the woman who is begging for clarity. She's not sitting around waiting for a text. She's not replaying conversations or blaming herself. She's at peace. She's living, not just existing in the emotional shadows of what used to be. And that version of you is someone he begins to feel the absence of in a very real way. He remembers your warmth, your support, the way you made him feel. But now, you're not there. And the person you've become, she's even more grounded, more beautiful, more magnetic. Men are extremely sensitive to this energetic change. They might not be able to describe it in words, but they feel it. When a woman begins to move on, not out of bitterness, but out of growth, it unsettles something in them. Because now if he wants a place in your life, he knows he has to show up differently. He can't come back to the same version of you who was once available at half effort. He sees that your standards have changed. Your energy has matured. You've elevated. What makes this growth so attractive is that it's not about proving anything. You're not becoming this better version of yourself to get his attention. You're doing it for you. And that authenticity, that self-love, it's magnetic. It draws people in naturally. Not just him, but anyone aligned with the new version of your life. And that's when he starts to wonder if he even still has access to you. Not just to your time, but to your heart, your softness, your care. And if he does want back in, he knows he can't come the same way he left. Because now, you're no longer the same woman he walked away from. You've evolved, and that evolution changes everything. So when a man comes back after no contact, it's rarely just about missing your presence. It's about everything your absence made him realize. Your silence sparked curiosity, challenged his ego, shifted your energy, and forced him to face emotions he never had to deal with when you were always there. It gave him the clarity he couldn't find in your presence, and it showed him a version of you that evolved in his absence. Stronger, calmer, more self-assured. But here's the truth. Him coming back isn't the win. You coming back to yourself is. Whether he returns or not, the growth you stepped into is what truly matters. And if he does come back, he'll have to meet you where you are now, not where he left you. Because you're no longer waiting, you're rising.